This culinary demo features Chef Ben Ramsdale of Maine General.
So we're going to move on to our latkes today. Latkes are a type of Jewish pancake that are often made with regular, like a white potato, shredded, an onion. These today we're going to make with sweet potato in place of the white potato. We're going to make them with apples in place of onions. So we're going to start by taking about 4 or 5, looking for about 1.5 pounds of grated sweet potatoes. It's going to make up the bulk of the latkes. You can absolutely use a food processor to do this with, if you prefer. Sweet potatoes are much more nutrient dense, usually the same price, if not cheaper than white potatoes. Great substitute. So we're just grating these on the large holes of a box grater. You can grate them any way that you wish. Very good. And the apple, because there's so little peel on it and because the peel is so nutrient dense, we're just going to leave the peel right on. We don't do that with a sweet potato because it's not particularly palatable. It's really tough and dry, so we don't use the peel on this. But this peel is very edible and very nutritious. So we're going to grate about a cup. So usually that's about 1 large apple. We're going to grate directly into the same bowl as the sweet potatoes. You'll probably never notice that the skin is in there, but it will make a difference in the nutritional content, so might as well leave it right in. Okay, so I'm gonna go ahead and shred up the rest of these, and then we will come back and finish putting this mix together. Okay, so we finished grating up the apple and sweet potato here. I'm gonna use this grater one more time because we're gonna use some fresh ginger. I'm gonna use about an inch piece of fresh ginger. We're gonna grate that in fine holes. Ginger is very fibrous, but the fibers run in the length of the direction of the piece of ginger. So as long as you make sure to grate it this way and not this way, you will chop all those fibers into little tiny pieces and it won't attack. That's why I like to use that. Good. A couple teaspoons of that should be just right. We're going to add a few teaspoons of lime juice. I do think that apples and sweet potato and lime juice play particularly well together. If you don't have lime juice, you can absolutely use lemon juice. You could use orange juice. This is particularly nice here though. We're going to use a couple teaspoons of ground cinnamon. Basically, these are fall spices. Fall and sweet potato are relatively fall-ish produce, so we're going to stick with that. Do a couple teaspoons of ground cinnamon. I'm going to do half a teaspoon of ground nutmeg, much stronger flavor, so you don't need nearly as much as with the cinnamon. Base note. Wipe that out, and we're going to use a teaspoon of baking powder. And while these aren't like a traditionally leavened baked good, these will help to give them a little bit of air and a little bit of extra crunch that they wouldn't otherwise have when they're cooking. We're going to use about half a teaspoon of our kosher salt, as mentioned before. Always important to make sure that our food is well seasoned, whether it's sweet or savory, very important. We're going to use 3 tablespoons of matzah meal. This is essentially like a gluten-free breadcrumb. If you are gluten sensitive, this is great for you. If you are not, feel free to use breadcrumbs or panko or anything like that. You basically want 6 tablespoons of stuff in here to help absorb all the liquid that the stones exude. So we're going to use a mix of matzah meal and our white whole wheat flour. You can use, in place of the whole wheat, white whole wheat, you can use regular whole wheat flour, you can use AP flour. We're really just looking for about 6 tablespoons of like a binding agent here. Very good. And now I'm going to grab a spatula and we will stir that up. Just get all these things together. So this is very different from traditional pancake, which is more of like a batter. We're essentially just going to use those binding agents that I mentioned here, and then we're gonna add a couple beaten eggs to this, and that is the entirety of the recipe. So it's really just produce, in this case, apples and sweet potato, that are bound together by a little bit of egg and flour, but essentially this is like a vegetable pancake. Good, I've got 2 beaten eggs here. So those will combine with the liquids that are gonna exude from the produce, as well as the mozzarella and the flour that we added there. I wanna make sure that that's really well distributed, because there's not a lot of moisture here, and you wanna make sure that that egg really is evenly distributed so that it helps to hold all these together. So I'm just gonna mix this for another minute, and then we'll move on to shaping and baking these. So we've got our latke mix all ready here. I've got a very well greased sheet pan here. It's important that there's a good layer of either oil or cooking spray on the pan, because this mix here is totally lean. There's no fat in it whatsoever, and I don't want those to stick, and I do want them to develop a nice golden brown crust. So this is really, this and the extra little bit of cooking spray that we're going to use on the top is the only fat on the entire dish. So do make sure that it's well greased so it doesn't stick, and so we get that nice caramelization on the bottom. I like to use, whenever possible, these are called portion scoops or ice cream scoops, just because it makes sure that they're nice and uniform. And because we're going to bake these, it's really important that they're all the same size so that they all bake at an even rate. So we're just going to fill that up nice and evenly. We're going to deposit that right on our pan. And then just using your hand, or you can also use a spatula, we're going to flatten it right out. Just about like that. You can absolutely make larger latkes. In our testing, we have found that this is kind of the sweet spot between edibility, portability, and if they get much bigger than this, they don't really cook through in the center all the way. So we like to do about 1/3 of a cup or so. Make them a little bit bigger or smaller at your leisure, but I wouldn't change the size too much. So just one more time, we're gonna pack that in there lightly. We're going to turn it out onto the tray. Keeping in mind, as I said, that there's not a lot of binder in here, so you want to handle these somewhat gently and just kind of flatten them out. Make sure that the edges aren't too ragged so that it all stays together when it cooks. I will do that with the rest of these, and then we'll come back and get them in the oven. So we've got all of these laid out. They're all quite evenly shaped. We're just going to give these, again, a good solid coating of hand spray, because this is really going to help that browning and caramelization. We are going to flip these about halfway through, so we do need to make both sides and not stick to the pan. We've got our pan preheated. These cook hot. If you have a conventional oven, probably 425, maybe even 450. We're going to be doing 400 in our convection oven here. Throw those in. We're going to give them about 10 to 12 minutes, and then we'll take a peek, and at that point they should be ready to flip. So we've got about 10-12 minutes on those latkes, and we'll pull them out, and they look delicious and approaching done. As you can see, it's so incredible. But I am going to go through and flip them. You can see why the side that contacts the sheet really crisps up. Get some nice color on it, and I want to get that on the top too for just a few minutes. So as you remember, I have already sprayed these, so they come pre-oiled on the top. So I'm just going to go ahead and flip each of these. And as previously mentioned, these are pretty near done, so I'm really just doing this for an extra 3 to 5 minutes at most, just to get some of that extra caramelization and crispness on the top, which is now the bottom. Good, so we'll just go ahead and put that back in the oven, and we'll check that again in just another 3 to 5 minutes. So the latkes have had about 5 more minutes in the oven, and they are beautiful. We've got some nice crispy dark brown edges, some nice browning all the way through. And because of that amount of fat that we added to the pan and to the top, you can see even though they don't have any fat in the pancake themselves, they've gotten nice and crisp, dark brown, caramelized, delicious. Those can be served as is. Those are great with some sliced apples, some apple sauce, some Greek yogurt, which you could stir a little bit of. If you wanted to make it sweet, you could add a little bit of maple syrup or brown sugar. If you wanted to make it savory, you could add some herbs, a little bit of garlic, a little bit of green onion to the sauce. So these can go in either direction really easily, and they keep really well. They won't maintain their crispness for that long, but these keep well as leftovers to have for breakfast or as a snack for a couple days in the fridge. So try these out.